This is undoubtedly an explosive and unsurpassable horror masterpiece from Indonesia, packed with intense thrills that nearly go off the charts. Even in 2024, time hasn't dulled the brilliance of this years-old classic. It continues to influence a new generation of young horror directors. The creator, Joko Anwar, hailed by netizens as a peer to the masters of horror, achieved what others might never in a lifetime with just 2 films, Satan's Slaves, earning him the prestigious Horizon Honor nomination. Today, let's revisit this unbeatable top horror film. Many people are left puzzled by the plot after watching it. So today, let's delve into it completely. Mawarni gives birth to a child with her husband every 6 years, making it 4 children now, including their eldest daughter. But despite being critically ill, she stubbornly insists on continuing this cycle. Mawarni was once a popular Indonesian singer, but it seems her radiance drew the jealousy of fate. Since her first pregnancy, she contracted an incurable illness. She hoped everything would improve with the arrival of spring, but over the years, her condition only worsened, leaving her unable to care for herself. She could only summon her children by ringing a bell. Her husband, Bari, spent all their savings trying to cure her. To help with expenses, their eldest son, Tony, sold his beloved motorcycle. The burden of supporting a family of 6 fell entirely on Bari. Every day after school, Tony would gently comb his mother's hair. But one day, he noticed his mother's hair falling out in clumps, an ominous sign. As he pondered this, a chilling wind blew open the window. When Tony closed the window and turned around, he saw a horrifying sight. Those haunting eyes left him too scared to approach his mother. He hurriedly left the room, using homework as an excuse. That night, Bari and Mawarni's conversation drifted to Rini's ears. When Bari noticed Rini, he swallowed his words. Rini sensed her father was hiding something but didn't dwell on it. Returning to her room, she soon fell asleep. But not long after, the urgent ringing of a bell broke the night's silence. Her exhausted father was already asleep on the couch. Following the sound, Rini was shocked to find her paralyzed mother standing. Overjoyed, she turned to see her mother still lying in bed, never having moved. If it wasn't her mother, then who was the woman in the wedding dress before her? Terrified, Rini mustered the courage to tap the woman's shoulder. When the woman slowly turned, she wore a terrifying smile. In the next second, Rini woke up from the nightmare, relieved it was only a bad dream. But then, the bell rang again, and she saw her paralyzed mother standing by the window. Rini glanced at the empty bed, finally feeling some relief. When Bari arrived, Mawarni had already passed away. Mawarni's death marked the beginning of the story. The next day, they buried Mawarni, tormented by illness. At the funeral, Rini met the religious leader Ustad's son, Hendra. That night, they held a local ceremony to send Mawarni off. Bari didn't believe in such things, but it was the last thing he could do for his wife. Over the years, treating Mawarni's illness had left the family penniless, and even their house would soon be repossessed by the bank. After saying goodbye to his children, Bari left for the city. But as soon as he left, eerie things began to happen. Tony was listening to the radio when he heard the sound of his mother's bell from upstairs. Thinking he was hallucinating, he went to check. On the attic, he saw the bell shaking in midair. Despite his mother's past care and love, fear drove him back to his bed. All that remains is Rini, his 3 younger brothers, and Rama, a wheelchair-bound grandmother with limited mobility. Before school, Tony gave Bondi a toy slice camera. After Tony left, Bondi saw a horrifying sight while playing with the camera. Bondi, unfamiliar with such a toy, was enamored with it. But the next photo revealed a woman in a wedding dress. When Bondi looked again, the woman had disappeared. That night, Tony experienced something strange. The radio suddenly played his mother's voice. Tony. Exhausted, Tony was immediately alert. A ghostly figure in the dark slowly stood up. Bizarrely, he found his mother's comb in his hand. Terrified, Tony turned on the nearby lamp. The ghostly figure vanished as if it had been an illusion. This incident convinced him something was amiss. In the following days, they encountered various eerie events. One night, Ian woke Bondi to go to the bathroom. A photo on the wall looked particularly eerie in the night. Bondi tried to cover it with a cloth, but the cloth hung in midair. It seemed like there was a person underneath. The continuous horrors made Tony think his mother's spirit was unsettled. On the very next day, he buried the relics of his mother's life in her grave. But this act didn't end the horrors. The situation escalated. One day, Rama, seated in her wheelchair, wrote something on paper. She then wheeled herself as if possessed. Suddenly, The wheels seemed stuck, unable to move. Even so, Rama struggled to stand up and do something. At that moment, the house was empty. Rini, meanwhile, was meeting with Hendra. Strangely, Hendra urged Rini's family to move out of their house immediately. He had seen a strange woman at Rini's mother's funeral. As the son of a religious leader, he wasn't supposed to believe in ghosts and demons, but passing by their house, he saw the pale woman in the wedding dress again. Rini successfully ignored Hendra's warning. Her destitute family couldn't afford to move anyway. Returning home, Rini searched every room but couldn't find Rama. Then her brother let out a piercing scream. Drawn by the sound, Rini saw that Rama had jumped into a well and killed herself. In just 2 days, Rini lost 2 dear family members. She recalled Hendra's earlier words. If they didn't move out, no one knew what would happen next. In an era without mobile phones, the only way to send messages was by letter. Before she could inform her distant father, Bondi, who found Rama, inexplicably developed a deadly high fever. While Rini worried, she found a letter Rama left on the table. Following the address, she found Buddyman in the city. Buddyman revealed that he and Rama were childhood sweethearts, but they didn't end up together. Rama married his classmate instead. After marrying, Rama quickly gave birth to Rini's father. Oddly, after her father's marriage, his wife didn't conceive for 5 years. When she finally did, she developed an incurable illness. This doesn't make Rama suspect that the baby in her womb is a deal she made with the demon Satan, and talks about how as long as you are united, then Satan can't do anything about you. As they sought more information, Bondi, who was feverish at home, began to babble. When Rini returned, Bondi's fever had mysteriously disappeared, and his gaze was vacant. Seeing Bondi's eyes, Ian couldn't sleep that night. He turned and saw the deceased Rama by Bondi's bed. Terrified, Bondi hid under his blanket, praying Rama would spare him. When he peeked again, she was gone. Ian went to the living room to sleep on the couch. Opening the door, he saw Rama hiding behind it. Frightened, Ian ran, but his clothes caught on a hook. Rama seemed about to break through the door, but seeing Ian, she retreated. The next day, Rini found Ian's bed empty. They searched the house and found Ian sleeping in a trash bin outside. Rini cooked him a scallion omelet. As she placed the omelet on the table, Rama's wheelchair wheeled over by itself. The sight made Rini break out in a cold sweat. She saw Rama's reflection in the glass, sitting in the wheelchair. The next day, Rini's unease persisted. She reported her findings to the local ustads. The ustads inspected Rama's room but found nothing. In the end, he could only offer those useless prayers to ward off evil for the family. Naively, Rini thought the troubles would end, but she vaguely saw someone standing by the door. When she wiped the water from her face, the figure had vanished. As the progress bar continues to push on, it also slowly brings the story to a climax. Worried, Rini dressed in white. It was the only way she could hope for Allah's refuge. Her prayers went unanswered, vaguely foreboding. She immediately carried her brother to Ustad's house. She knew staying in that house would be their doom. After telling Hendra about the situation, the kindly man wants to call in Buddyman to help. As he walked out the door, he stepped onto a path leading to his death. The motorcycle sped down the road like lightning. For some reason, a strange figure suddenly appeared in the woods. Hendra swerved, causing the motorcycle to crash under a speeding truck. By afternoon, Hendra's body was returned home. Seeing his son, Ustads nearly collapsed. A letter fell from Hendra's body. Catching Rini's attention, she discreetly pocketed the letter without saying anything. After his son's death, Ustads harbored resentment toward Rini and her siblings. With no other choice, Rini and her siblings returned to their house. That night, Rini was awakened by a noise outside. Through the darkness, she saw someone standing not far from the house. Judging by the figure, the person looked very much like the deceased Hendra. As she tried to speak, the figure outside grabbed Rini's arm tightly. Seeing this, Ustads outside remained calm. After she forcefully broke free, Bari, who was working far away, returned home. He learned that his mother had committed suicide by jumping into a well half a month earlier. Bari decided to leave after celebrating Ian's birthday the next day. However, the next day would never come. Rini had no choice but to ask her father what he had discussed with her mother that day. Before he could answer, they heard Ian's cries for help. Ian was being pulled into the well where Rama had committed suicide. Without hesitation, Bari jumped in. Time passed, but there was no sign of Ian. Suddenly, Ian was brought back up. Rama, who had drowned, also floated up after Bari left. They realized that staying any longer would be fatal. When he stepped outside, they saw the house surrounded by people in black robes. The black-robed figures terrified them. Chaos ensued as they realized their fate seemed sealed. Amidst the confusion, Rama's wheelchair rolled in. Before they could react, the wheelchair was hurled at them. The narrow wooden door was then locked by an unseen force. The two children outside had not yet entered. Ian was also continuously turned backwards by a suction force. Strangely, the force seemed to match Ian's strength. Hearing the calls, Bondi bravely rescued Ian. The locked wooden door opened automatically. The room returned to its usual calm, as if nothing had happened.
Anak-anakku tidak ada yang boleh kalian ambil. Kami tidak rela. Kalau ada yang berani ambil anak-anakku.
Bari's words had an unexpected effect. The black-robed figures dropped what they were holding and left. They safely made it to the next day. The family excitedly packed their belongings, but the moving truck never arrived. Rini, who was taking a walk, noticed that there were many kernels spilled on the ground that she hadn't seen before. It was clearly not something that should be in this forest. Learning that Bari's family was moving, Ustad stayed with them that night. That night, Rini and Tony discussed the strange events, and heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. She opened the door to see her deceased mother. Ustad similarly hears a commotion emanating from outside the house and walks out of the room, only to realize that the person turns out to be Hendra. The doorway was blocked. Bari, asleep, heard whispers and saw his deceased wife beside him. It was near midnight, but instead of harming Bari, she took the almost 7-year-old Ian. By the time Bari finds Ian, he's already standing in the cult members. Seeing this, the family lacked the courage to rescue Ian from the cult members. Retreating inside, the cultists swarmed. Trapped, they could only pray for a delayed death. They were quickly cornered, with cultists ready to break in. At that moment, Rama's wheelchair reappeared. The time Rama bought allowed them to escape in Buddyman's car. Time quickly came a year later, and that nightmare had long since faded with the years resisting it. That day a new neighbor arrived and brought them an after-dinner snack. Neighbors seemed harmonious. Little did they know, this kindness was the start of another nightmare.
Sudah waktunya kita panen lagi.
Kita harus memastikan kalau mereka tidak akan pindah.
With the camera on the red kernel placed in the glass jar, marking the end of Satan's Slaves 1, Rama's suspicions were correct. Mawarni, unable to conceive, made a deal with Satan, with the price being that her last child would be sacrificed to Satan as a tribute at the age of 7. Thus, Mawarni had to keep having children. Her deteriorating health couldn't maintain this peace. On learning this, Rama commits suicide to protect Ian, who was in their sights. Rama's spirit dragged Ian into the well to save him, but seeing Bari's desperation, Rama returned Ian. After Bondi is possessed by an evil spirit, Rama tries to get rid of what is in him. Ian witnessed this. As Ian's 7th birthday approached, Rama tried other means to delay. Ian's pull by the force was Rama's way to show Bondi not to abandon him. Back in the day, Buddyman used to say that as long as you were united, Satan's slaves can't do anything to you. When they were united, the cult members couldn't even enter the house. But after they abandoned Ian, the cult members outside swarmed in. This is the full story of Satan's Slaves 1.